And as the quiet of the night folds itself around you, you begin to sense that the answer has never been far, nor locked away in the deep vaults of some distant heaven. It is here, so close that you could almost breathe it in, and yet it waits for your permission to be seen. Most move through life convinced that supply is something to be earned, hunted, or bargained for, but the truth is softer, stranger, infinitely more intimate. Supply is not out there in the uncertain market of the world. It is born in the secret chambers of your own being, from a word planted like a seed in the soil of imagination. And like any seed, once it takes root, it must bring forth after its kind. Consider how a single word held in the stillness of night can move mountains you cannot yet see. The world rushes past, busy with the noise of transactions and the clamor of needs, yet the quiet mind knows that the true transaction happens within. For as you inwardly accept that you already possess, the outer world must mirror your conviction. This is the mystery. The outer is but the shadow of the inner, and the shadow cannot help but follow the shape you give it. You may take a word, any word that carries with it the fragrance of your desire, and hold it as you drift into the gentle drowsiness between wakefulness and sleep. Not as a wish, not as a plea, but as a fact already fulfilled. Lay it under your pillow, if it pleases you. Let it be your silent companion through the night, for in that holy borderland, your mind is most impressionable, and the seed most eager to take the shape of the soil that receives it. You are not sending this word into the darkness as a request. You are nesting it in the certainty that it is already so. Feel for a moment what it would be like if you were already in possession of all the wealth you have ever longed for. Not merely the coins or the notes, but the freedom, the ease, the expansion of being. Let that feeling saturate your breath, your bones, your very skin. And now place that feeling into the chosen word, so that the word becomes alive, a living symbol of the state fulfilled. This is not superstition, this is law. Consciousness is the only reality, and consciousness impressed with an idea must project that idea into form. Do not think of money as something capricious, moving towards some and away from others by chance or whim. Money, like all forms, is drawn to its image in the mirror of consciousness. If you are the embodiment of wealth within, it must find you without. It cannot do otherwise, for the stream always flows back to its source, and you are the source. You are the spring from which all appearances flow. This is why a simple act, repeated in faith, can alter the whole pattern of your life. Each night, before sleep claims you, enter the silence. See nothing of lack or delay. Whisper the word, or simply let it rest in the quiet corridors of your mind. Not a frantic word, but one spoken as though the matter was settled long ago. For the deeper self does not respond to urgency. It responds to knowing. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Let your word be the sound of that answer, already given. And when morning comes, you do not rush to see if the world has changed. You walk as though it has, for the change is already unfolding in the unseen. The delay between planting and harvest is not an absence of growth. It is the hidden work of life itself, weaving the unseen into the visible. Trust that it is done, and you will see the fruit in its perfect season. But there is something few ever notice. The word itself is not magic. It is your assumption made flesh. The paper under your pillow, the whisper before sleep. These are not talismans to persuade some distant force. They are doorways through which you remind yourself of who you already are. The only power is within you, and the word is the key that turns the lock. Yet the key can open more than the vaults of gold. If you dare to use it, it can open the gates of every locked possibility in your life. For wealth is not a number in an account. It is the natural expression of the one who knows they already have all. Which leads us to the question most never think to ask. If the key opens every door, then what other treasures have been waiting, silent and unseen, just beyond the threshold of your belief? And as you let that question hover in the stillness, it begins to dawn on you that the same unseen hand that moves money toward you is the one that arranges all the details of your life. It is not separate from you, nor is it moved by the tides of the outer world. It is your own awareness, shaping itself into the forms you call experience. And yet most live as though this power were a stranger, as though the key to their own treasure were lost in some far country. But here is the wonder. The key has never left your keeping. It is your ability to assume, in the quiet of your own mind, that you already are what you desire to be. That assumption, once accepted without wavering, becomes the invisible magnet drawing all that is like it into your world. Money is only one of its servants. It comes because you have summoned it, not with effort, but with identity. The paper under your pillow, the whispered word, the vision before sleep, these are not to coax life into compliance, but to remind you to live as though it were already done. Imagine now that the whole world is but a mirror, and the image it reflects is the one you have clothed yourself in within. If within you have worn the garment of abundance, the mirror cannot help but reveal it. You may not see the first threads as they are woven, but you will feel the texture begin to change. A phone call here, a meeting there, a sudden opening, where before there was a wall. All these are merely the shadows cast by your inner conviction. When you lie down at night, and place the word beneath your head, see it not as a ritual of chance, but as a seal upon your heart. The word is your emblem, your crest, declaring that you have stepped into the realm where it is already yours. Feel it so deeply, that when you close your eyes, the thought of not having it seems absurd. You do not strain to believe, you simply rest in the knowing. In that rest, the deeper self is stirred, and it begins to shape the unseen substance of the world to match your assumption. It is written, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." Peace is the sign that you have entered the end. You will know you are there when the urgency dissolves, and the desire feels like memory. In that peace, the creative act is finished, and all that remains is its unveiling. And unveiling always comes, for nothing conceived in the inner world fails to be born. Think of the word beneath your pillow as a living seed. Each night you return to it, not digging it up to see if it grows, but covering it gently, knowing it will break the soil in its season. You do not know the exact hour of its appearance, nor do you need to. The law is unfailing, what you sow you shall reap. And in this your only true sowing is in consciousness. Perhaps you have noticed how easily the mind can drift into old garments, the garments of doubt, of waiting, of wondering when. But each time you catch yourself, and return to the feeling of already having, you water the seed. You whisper again the word, not as a plea but as an acknowledgement. You feel the comfort of its truth as you sink into sleep, and the night becomes a silent ally in your creation. And there is more yet, for as the seed of wealth takes root, it begins to bear fruit beyond its kind. You may find that doors open in places you had not thought to knock, that opportunities arrive, dressed in the plain clothing of ordinary events, and yet within them lies the golden thread of your assumption fulfilled. You will realize that money was only the beginning, the first sprout of a far greater harvest. And once you have seen that, the question arises like a soft wind through the leaves. If this power answers to a single word placed beneath the pillow, what wonders might unfold if you dared to let every thought, every breath, be shaped by the end you choose to live in. And as that question lingers in the quiet chambers of your mind, you begin to feel a shift, a gentle but certain awareness that the very air around you is alive with potential, waiting for the shape you will give it. It is as though the invisible is leaning toward you, eager to take the form of your next assumption. And here lies the mystery most overlooked. The same creative law that brings a single coin to your hand can summon entire rivers of provision, if you will only allow yourself to dwell in the state where those rivers already flow. It is not more difficult to imagine yourself with much than with little, for the imagination knows nothing of size or scale. It knows only the feeling you feed it. The mind that can accept a single act of provision can just as easily accept an endless supply, for both are born of the same seed, the assumption that you already have. And yet many shrink their visions, believing that to imagine too greatly is to tempt disappointment. But you are not tempting disappointment. When you imagine greatly, you are tempting life itself to reveal more of its infinite store. When you lay your head upon the pillow, and the chosen word rests beneath it, you are doing more than placing paper under cloth. You are aligning your night with the end you have claimed. That word becomes like a lamp placed in the temple of your mind, casting its golden light upon every corridor of thought, illuminating only the state of already having. And in that light, the shadows of lack cannot stand. They dissolve as naturally as mist before the morning sun. The outer world may still echo the patterns of your former assumptions, but do not be swayed by these remnants. They are but the fading light of a day that has already ended. The new day is already begun in you, and it will appear in time as surely as dawn follows night. The word under your pillow is the silent covenant between you and the unseen, a declaration that you have stepped into possession now, not in some far-off future. There is a sweetness in this practice when it is approached without strain. You are not working to make something happen. you are allowing yourself to rest in the truth that it is already so. As you drift into the stillness of sleep, the mind sinks into that fertile depth where all things are formed. It is there, in that sacred depth, that your assumption is impressed upon the substance of life, and from that moment, it must be externalized. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Substance, not shadow, not wish, but substance. You hold it in the feeling, in the inner knowing, long before it takes shape in the visible, and the longer you dwell in that knowing, the more naturally the outer must conform. You cannot hold a living picture within, without the outer mirror bending to reflect it. Do not be surprised when provision comes from directions you never thought to look. The law is not bound to your plans, it is bound only to the state you occupy. Your task is not to manage the channels, but to remain faithful to the end. If you have accepted wealth as your present reality within, the channels will appear without, whether by swift streams or hidden springs. And there comes a moment, often without fanfare, when you realize you are no longer waiting. The desire that once felt like a reaching has settled into you like a memory of something long known. You walk lighter, you breathe easier, and the presence of wealth feels as natural as the beat of your heart. In that moment, the outer world has no choice but to reveal the harvest. Yet even in the joy of that harvest, a deeper truth calls to you, a truth that whispers that the power which brought this forth has no limit, no end, no measure. And once you hear that whisper, you cannot help but wonder, if this law can bring gold to your hand, what might it reveal, if you dared to claim the entire kingdom as already yours? And as that question unfurls in the quiet of your mind, you feel the strange and beautiful weight of it, the thought that nothing in the kingdom is withheld from you, except by the veil of your own belief. The law that brought a single desire to life does not grow weary with greater dreams. It is as ready to give you the vastness as it was to give you the smallest coin. And so the question shifts from "Can I have this?" to "Am I willing to accept the truth that it is already mine?" For the kingdom is not something you will one day inherit. It is the state you step into now, in the secret place of your own awareness. This stepping is not done with your feet, but with your acceptance. The word beneath your pillow becomes the scepter in your hand, a symbol of your quiet dominion over the shapes of your life. You are not commanding the world as a ruler commands subjects. You are simply assuming your rightful place, as the source from which all appearances flow. See yourself even now, walking through the world as one who is lavishly provided for, whose storehouses never run dry. Let that image not be of grasping or gathering, but of resting in the abundance that already surrounds you. It may seem subtle at first, a soft, unshakable calm that begins to replace the old urgency, but from that calm, movements are set in place that no outer effort could orchestrate. You may notice, as you persist in this knowing, that life begins to feel as though it is leaning toward you. Ideas present themselves. Conversations open unseen doors. What seemed improbable becomes almost inevitable. This is the natural rhythm of living in the end. The world takes the shape of the truth you have accepted. It must, for the shadow is bound to the figure. When you lie down at night, and the word rests beneath you, know that it is more than paper and ink. It is the embodied signal to your deeper self that you have crossed the threshold. You have stepped into the room where it is already done. And the deeper self, receiving that signal, begins its quiet work of arranging the stage. You are not required to know the lines of the play, or the order of its scenes. Your part is to remain in the role you have claimed until the curtain rises. It is written, "All things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive." Prayer is not the utterance of need, but the acceptance of fulfillment. Believing is not straining to make something true, but resting in the ease of it being so. And receiving is simply the unveiling of what has always been present in the invisible. You will find that the more you practice this gentle rest, the less you are swayed by appearances. A bill may come, yet you feel no tremor of fear, for within you have already accepted the state in which all is paid, all is supplied, all is overflowing. This inner constancy is the unshakable ground upon which the outer must take form. And there is a sweetness in realizing that the channels through which your wealth arise may be so varied, so unexpected, that they feel almost playful. The Lord delights in surprising you, not to prove its power, but to remind you that its ways are higher than your ways, that it is bound to your assumption, not your logic, that the unseen currents carry their treasures along paths you could not have charted, and yet they arrive at your door, precisely on time. In this you begin to taste the freedom that comes from knowing you are not limited by what the eyes can see, or the hands can hold. You start to sense that the wealth you have claimed is only a fraction of the abundance that is yours by nature. And as that realization deepens, another whisper rises in the stillness, a whisper that asks if you are ready to let your imagination not only provide for your needs, but transform the very story you have believed about who you are. And as that whisper lingers, you begin to see that wealth itself was never the final gift. It was the opening of a door. The true treasure is the revelation that you are the one shaping the very stage upon which your life unfolds. To have altered the flow of money toward you is only proof that you can alter anything, for the principle is the same. It is not the object that holds the power, but the consciousness that calls it forth. And now, as you rest in this awareness, you sense that what you choose to embody can extend far beyond the boundaries you once believed in. The word beneath your pillow becomes more than a signal for supply, it becomes the emblem of your authority. Each night as your head lowers into the stillness, you feel its presence, not as a superstition, but as a living reminder that the unseen listens to the state you dwell in. You no longer speak to the outer world with requests, you speak inwardly, as one who has already received. This inner conversation, repeated in the quiet, shapes the fabric of the day to come. It is here you begin to taste the greater mystery, that the law is impersonal, yet perfectly intimate. It responds not to your worthiness or unworthiness, but to the tone of your inner being. If that tone is one of completion, of gratitude for what already is, then every form that matches it must appear. It cannot do otherwise, for the shadow cannot rebel against the figure. Feel now what it is to live without the sensation of lack. Let your imagination place you in rooms where your needs are met before they are even spoken, where the flow of provision is so constant that you no longer think of its source. And then, more deeply still, realize that these rooms are not somewhere you will one day enter. They exist now, within the house of your own consciousness, and you hold the key. When you sink into sleep with that key resting under your head, the border between what is seen and unseen grows thin. The mind, unguarded by the noise of day, receives your assumption without resistance. You are not there to monitor the process, you are there to dwell in the end so fully that it becomes your only reality. And in the silence of that dwelling, the invisible begins its sure work. It is written, the kingdom of God is within you, not above, not ahead, not after, within. This is why no one and nothing outside you has the power to grant or withhold what you have already accepted within. The outer may delay in its reflection, but it can never deny the truth of what has been impressed upon the inner. You will notice, as you live more often in this inner richness, that the urgency to make things happen dissolves. You move more gently, speak more slowly, listen more deeply, for you are no longer chasing, you are receiving. And in this receiving, life seems to meet you at every turn, bringing not only what you imagined, but what you did not even think to ask for. These are the byproducts of alignment, the overflow of a cup already full. The mind that once measured possibilities by logic and circumstance, now begins to measure them only by the breadth of its own acceptance. And as you continue in this way, a new question stirs, one that is not born of lack, but of limitless curiosity. If you are the dreamer, and the dream, the sower and the harvest, the author and the scene, then what story will you dare to tell next? And more than that, who will you dare to become within it? And as that question stirs within you, there is a quiet recognition that the answer has never been hidden in some distant realm, waiting to be discovered. It has always been here, like a faint melody beneath the noise, waiting for you to attune your ear. The same power that answers to a single word beneath the pillow, will answer to every word you allow to take root in the garden of your mind. You begin to see that nothing in your world is random. Each event, each meeting, each opportunity, is the outpicturing of the inner conversation you have been holding with yourself all along. This is why the act seems so simple, and yet holds such depth. To place a word beneath your pillow, is to place a truth at the very threshold of your sleeping mind. It is the last thing your senses touch before surrendering to the deeper waters of the subconscious. And in that surrender, the word becomes not just a thought, but a living impression, one that the deeper self accepts without argument. For in that drowsy borderland, resistance is silenced. When you choose the word, it must be one that carries the fragrance of the state you wish to embody. Not a word of longing, but of completion. It must feel like the soft seal of something already accomplished. This is the true secret. You are not planting a hope,
but a remembrance. You are not trying to make something happen, you are allowing what already is to reveal itself in form. As the nights pass, you may notice subtle shifts. The tension that once gripped you begins to loosen, your eyes find beauty in places you once overlooked. The people you meet seem to speak into the very vision you are carrying. And money, that symbol of exchange and flow, begins to appear in ways that seem almost playful. A forgotten payment arrives, an opportunity you had dismissed opens again. A gift is offered with no strings attached. Each of these is but the shadow of the state you have entered. The mind that lives in the end walks differently through the world. It does not rush to measure progress, it moves as one who knows the harvest is inevitable. When you know the seed is in the soil, you do not dig it up each morning to see if it has sprouted. You water it with faith, and let the earth do its work. And so it is with the word beneath your pillow. Each night you return to it, you affirm that the seed is alive, and that its fruit will appear in its perfect season. It is written, "So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void." The word you hold, whether spoken aloud or silently embraced, cannot return empty. It must accomplish what it is sent to do, for the one who sends it, and the one who receives it are the same, your own awareness. You begin to understand that the physical act of placing the word under your pillow, it is a tangible reminder that you have chosen the state you will dwell in tonight. This is not magic in the sense of manipulating forces outside you. It is the natural law of consciousness. The same law that governs the turning of seasons and the rising of the sun. And when you see this clearly, a new kind of peace settles over you. You no longer strain against time. You no longer wonder if the current will carry you. You rest in the knowing that it already has, and the shore you are approaching is the one you have chosen in the quiet of your own heart. Yet even as this peace deepens, another realization rises gently from within, that the shore itself may not be the end at all, but only the beginning of a far greater journey into the limitless landscapes of your own imagination.
And as that realization softens into you, you begin to sense that this journey has never truly been about reaching some final shore. It has always been about awakening to the truth that you are the ocean itself, the boundless, endless source from which every wave of experience is born. Money, opportunity, relationships, health, they are but ripples upon the surface, each one carrying the shape and rhythm of the consciousness beneath. When you place that word under your pillow, you were not summoning the tide from afar. You were simply allowing the waters to reveal what has always been moving within you. There is a quiet majesty in knowing this. The urgency to prove, to measure, to compare dissolves like mist in the morning sun. You begin to walk as one who cannot be diminished, for you have seen that all supply is drawn from the well of your own awareness. You are not at the mercy of circumstance, for circumstance is the shadow of state. The world is not deciding for you. It is echoing you. Each night as your head rests upon the pillow, and the chosen word lies beneath, you are returning to the secret place where all creation begins. You may think of it as a temple without walls, a chamber carved in silence, where no voice speaks except the one you choose to hear. And in that place you speak the language of the end fulfilled. You breathe the air of completion. You allow yourself to feel what it would be if this were not a hope, but a fact so certain it no longer needs to be named. The subconscious, which never sleeps, takes this feeling as its instruction. It does not reason or question. It accepts the impression and begins to rearrange all outer things to match it. You may not witness its work, but you will walk into rooms already prepared, conversations already aligned, and paths already cleared. The effect may seem sudden, but the cause has been forming in the unseen since the moment you claimed it as done. It is here that you come to understand why the act must be gentle. Effort belongs to the outer world. Creation belongs to rest. Just as the seed unfolds its life in darkness without strain, so does your assumption take root when you allow it to be. To press and push is to disturb the soil. To rest is to trust the law. Be still and know that I am God. Stillness is the great proof of faith. It is the quiet acceptance that what you have imagined exists now, and the outer is simply catching up to the inner. Stillness does not mean inactivity. It means you move through your days from a place of certainty, without the tremor of doubt that scatters the seed. And so the word under your pillow becomes more than a symbol. It becomes a dwelling place. You enter it each night, and it shapes you while you sleep. Night after night it draws you deeper into identity, until the line between imagining and having dissolves entirely. You awaken not to a world that is changing, but to the recognition that it has already changed. Yet there is a further depth still waiting. For once you have lived this truth with money, once you have seen it obey your assumption, you cannot help but wonder what might happen if you placed other words beneath your pillow. Words for healing, for joy, for freedom, for the complete transformation of your life's story. And in that wondering, you hear again the quiet certainty that has been with you from the beginning. There is no limit, except the one you have imagined. And as that truth settles deeper into you, the very air seems to change. It feels lighter, more obedient, as though it waits for the next shape you will give it. You realize there is nothing sacred about the word itself, except the life you breathe into it. The paper under your pillow is not the source of the miracle. It is the doorway through which you step into the state, where the miracle is already complete. And once you have entered that state, the outer world has no choice but to bow to it. It is in this recognition that a new tenderness arises toward yourself. You no longer approach the night as a battleground between what is and what you hope for. You approach it as a homecoming. The moment your head touches the pillow, you are already there, not moving toward the desire, but resting in it. The word beneath you becomes the anchor that keeps you from drifting back into the old seas of doubt. It keeps you steady in the knowing. Each night becomes a sacred rehearsal of living in the end. You are not chasing results, for results are simply the natural fruit of your state. You walk through the day as one who has already received, and you return at night to seal it again. This rhythm is quiet, but unshakable, and life begins to reflect it in ways you could not have predicted. Perhaps you will notice it first in the way money begins to flow toward you with less resistance. A debt you carried is suddenly resolved. A client appears without effort. An unexpected refund finds its way into your hands. Each of these is not a cause for disbelief, but a reminder that the law is faithful. The cause was your assumption. The effect is the world rearranging itself to meet it. It is written, "Call those things which be not as though they were." This is not a command to pretend. It is an invitation to remember that what you call forth within is already established in the unseen, and the act of calling is simply the recognition of its existence. You are not making it real. You are aligning your sight to see it. And as you persist in this practice, something even greater begins to occur. You notice that the state you enter for money begins to spill over into other areas, without your conscious effort. Opportunities you hadn't imagined open in relationships, health, creative expression. You begin to see that the law makes no distinction between gold and laughter, between a home and a healed body. All are drawn to the state in which they are already yours. This is the quiet majesty of living in the end. It is not a one-time act, but a way of being. The word under your pillow trains you to choose your state deliberately, to make it your resting place rather than a fleeting visit. And from that place, every form that matches it must come, whether by swift arrival or gentle unfolding. But as you stand in this expanding awareness, another thought arises, soft yet insistent. If you have proven to yourself that the unseen answers faithfully to the smallest of impressions, then what might happen if you dared to impress upon it the grandest vision you have ever held, not only for yourself, but for the world you touch? And could it be that the same word beneath your pillow tonight might be the seed from which a life beyond all former imagining begins to grow? And as that question breathes through you, you begin to feel the vastness of what it asks. It is no longer simply about receiving something you have wanted. It is about awakening to the realization that you are the one who gives reality its form. The same power that draws money to your hand is the power that paints the whole canvas of your life. It waits only for the image you will dare to place upon it, and it does not measure that image by your past, your logic, or your history. It measures only by the feeling you accept as true now. The word under your pillow becomes a seed, yes, but also a mirror. Each night it reflects back to you the state you have chosen to dwell in. If that state is abundance, the mirror cannot show you lack. If that state is completion, the mirror cannot return the image of longing. And so you learn to tend not only to the word, but to the atmosphere of your inner being. For the outer world is never more than the echo of that atmosphere. When you close your eyes and rest your head, you do not imagine yourself reaching or striving. You imagine yourself being. You feel the solidness of the fulfilled desire, as though it were carved into the foundation of your life. You sense its weight, not as a burden, but as the comforting weight of something that belongs to you completely. This is the essence of living in the end, to let the feeling of already so settle into you, until it becomes the only thing that feels natural. The subconscious receives this feeling without debate. It takes it as the unquestioned truth, and begins to arrange the world in harmony with it. You may notice in the days that follow, that events begin to move without your pushing. Money finds its way toward you through channels you never considered. A conversation reveals a possibility that was hidden until now. The pieces seem to fall into place of their own accord, because you have set the blueprint within, and the outer must follow it. It is written, "As he thinketh in his heart, so is he." Your heart, in the language of Scripture, is your subconscious, the deep seat of feeling where the truths you accept take root. This is why the night is so precious. In that drifting moment between wakefulness and sleep, you have direct access to the heart, unguarded by reason, untouched by doubt. The word beneath your pillow, saturated with the feeling of fulfillment, becomes a living instruction to that deeper self. You begin to understand that the physical act is not about superstition, but about focus. It is a deliberate choosing of the last thought you give yourself before surrendering to the dream. And because the subconscious magnifies whatever you hand it at that doorway, the practice becomes a nightly anointing, a quiet claiming of what is already yours. And yet, as this becomes more familiar, you find that the boundaries of your desire begin to dissolve. You start to feel that if this law has been so faithful with money, it must be equally faithful in all things. That the same way a single word can draw provision, it can also draw health, harmony, love, and joy. You begin to see your life not as separate compartments, but as one seamless field, and the state you hold touches every corner of it at once. And so a new curiosity arises, gentle but persistent. If the field responds to your state in its entirety, then what would happen if you chose, not just a desire, but an entirely new identity to place beneath your pillow? What would unfold if you dared to rest each night, not as the one who seeks, but as the one who has already become? And as that question stirs in you, a quiet recognition begins to take root, that identity is the true treasure, and all other things are but its shadows. For when you assume the being of the one who already has, the forms of having cannot resist appearing. Money, opportunities, and favor are simply the natural adornments of the self you have chosen to embody. And once you see this, you understand that the word beneath your pillow can carry far more than a single desire. It can carry the essence of who you have decided to be. Imagine, before sleep, placing not merely a word for wealth, but a word for the fullness of your new self, a name that only you and the unseen will understand. Let it be the silent declaration of your rebirth. When your head rests upon it, you are resting in your new name, your new nature, as though the old garment has already been laid aside, and the new one fits as though it were always yours. You do not try to convince yourself, you simply inhabit it, the way you slip into sleep without questioning how it will come. The subconscious welcomes this new identity the moment you present it without hesitation. It takes the tone of your being as its only truth, and in taking it, it begins to weave a world that reflects it in perfect detail. You do not need to decide how others will respond to you. The law will move through them as easily as breath moves through the body. The change in you cannot help but be recognized, even if they cannot name what has shifted. Here you see why the practice is so powerful in the stillness of night. It is in that drowsy space, with the chosen word resting beneath you, that the outer world loses its grip on your senses. You are no longer anchored to what has been. You are free to drift fully into what already is in the unseen. This is the holy ground, where the seed of your new self is planted, watered by the feeling of completion. It is written, "Put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness." To put on is to assume, to wear in consciousness the state you have chosen, until it becomes your natural dwelling place. The word beneath your pillow is the thread by which you pull that garment around you each night, and as you wear it in sleep, it becomes impossible to remove in waking. Soon you will notice the world bending in subtle ways to meet your new identity. Conversations shift, circumstances soften, opportunities that once passed you by seem to seek you out, and while others may call it fortune or coincidence, you will know it as the natural outworking of the self you have dared to claim.
There is a gentle wonder in realizing that the law makes no distinction between a desire and the one who desires. It will not only bring you what you ask for, it will remake you into the one for whom it is natural to have it. And once that shift occurs within, the outer can only follow. But in that awareness, a deeper mystery begins to rise, like a tide moving beneath the surface. If you can choose any self at all, and the world will conform to it, then how vast is the horizon of what you may become, and what other words might you dare to place beneath your pillow, knowing that each one is the seed of a life you have not yet lived. And as that horizon stretches before you, you begin to feel the quiet exhilaration of one who has discovered they are not confined by the story they have told themselves. You see that the limits you once thought were set in stone were only lines drawn in sand, and that the tide of assumption can wash them away in a single night. The word beneath your pillow is no longer just a practice, it is a declaration of sovereignty. Each evening, as your head sinks into rest, you are not merely preparing to sleep, you are entering the workshop of eternity, where every vision is shaped without resistance. Here in this silent workshop, you do not labor, you do not plead, you do not bargain, you inhabit. You let the chosen word become a doorway, and you walk through it into the end fulfilled. The more easily you step through, the more natural it becomes, until the imagined and the lived are indistinguishable. And once they are indistinguishable, the world has no choice but to reflect your inner state, as if it had always been so. The subconscious does not care how impossible a thing may seem to reason. It does not measure according to logic, time or probability. It accepts only the essence you feed it. This is why you may rest without fear, knowing that even if the outer world gives no sign tonight, the inner world has already accepted the impression, and the seed is already breaking open in the unseen soil. The night in this way becomes holy. It is not merely an end to the day, it is a beginning disguised as stillness. And when you place that folded word beneath your head, you are placing it into the hands of the part of you that never sleeps, the part that weaves your waking world from the threads you give it in these quiet moments. It is written, "He giveth his beloved sleep." Sleep is the divine gift, the pause in which the labor of the day is surrendered, and the creative power within you works without interference. You are not required to watch it, nor to instruct it step by step. Your only task is to enter the feeling of having received, and to let that feeling carry you into the depths. And with each repetition of this nightly ritual, you will notice something subtle yet profound. The need to check, to verify, to measure progress will fade. You will no longer rise wondering when your desire will come, for you will feel it as present even before it appears. This is the unmistakable sign that the work is done, not in the outer, but in the inner, where all true creation takes place. The world will call it coincidence, when the opportunities arise, when the money flows in, when the very thing you named under your breath becomes visible. But you will know it as the most natural unfolding, the shadow cast by the inner light you have been tending each night. And once you have known this certainty, you will never again look to the world for permission to believe. Yet in this growing mastery, there comes a deeper invitation. If every night is a doorway, if every word is a seed, then perhaps there are gardens within you yet untouched, waiting for the courage of your attention. And perhaps the wealth you have called forth is only the first flowering of a season without end, a season in which you dare to plant dreams so vast, they seem too large to name aloud, yet find that the law meets them with the same quiet certainty as it did the smallest seed. And as you let that possibility take shape in your mind, you begin to sense that the act itself, the placing of the word under your pillow, is not merely about manifesting a single outcome, but about training your entire being to remember who you are. Each night becomes a quiet returning, a gentle reclaiming of the authority you may have once forgotten. You start to see that you are never asking life to give you something, you are only reminding yourself to stand in what has already been given from the foundation of the world. This is why the ritual feels so peaceful, even before the evidence arrives. The moment you place the word there, you have stepped into alignment with the truth it represents. You may not yet see the harvest with your physical eyes, but you feel the soil beneath you vibrating with life. You sense that the seed is awake, that the law is already moving, and that nothing in heaven or earth can stop the fruit from appearing in its time. You lie in the dark, and the world outside your window fades into silence. In that stillness, The word beneath your head seems to glow with a presence that is more than ink, more than paper. It is a living agreement between you and your deeper self. And as you drift toward sleep, the edges of separation blur. There is no longer you and it. There is only the wholeness of already having. This is the secret most never discover, that when you feel yourself to already be the one who has, the world must bow to that identity. The money, the opportunity, the provision, they cannot resist you any more than water can refuse the pull of the moon. They are drawn, not by your need, but by the magnetic certainty of your being. It is written, "Before they call I will answer, and while they are yet speaking I will hear." In this law there is no waiting for approval, no hoping for a sign. The moment the feeling of fulfillment takes root within, the answer is already in motion. The channels may be hidden from you, but they are alive and forming, drawn by the picture you have impressed upon the unseen. And here, in this awareness, something beautiful happens. The pressure to make it happen dissolves entirely. You move through the day, as though you have been let in on a secret the world has not yet heard. You know the end is secured, so you are free to live lightly, to enjoy the unfolding, to notice the small and quiet ways life is already bending toward you. And yet with this peace comes a new kind of curiosity. If you can create this shift in the realm of money, if the law will rearrange the world so faithfully to match the state you have claimed, then what other areas of your life are waiting for you to place a word beneath the pillow? What other blessings stand ready, unseen, for the simple permission of your acceptance? And if all of them could be brought into form with the same quiet ease, how vast could your life truly become?
And as that question lingers, it begins to dawn on you that there is no limit to how many seeds may be sown in the garden of your being. Each word you place beneath your pillow is not competing with the others, for the soil of consciousness is infinite. It can bear countless harvests at once, each unfolding in its own season, each born from the same effortless law. What matters is not the number of seeds, but the certainty with which you plant them, the quiet conviction that what you have sown already exists in fullness. You may find that the word for money, once alive within you, begins to awaken other words unbidden, words for love, for health, for freedom. They rise like whispers from the deep, as if some greater part of you has been waiting for the moment you would remember that all these things are yours by nature. And just as the first seed drew its fruit without strain, so will these. For the law does not grow weary, nor does it decide that one gift is greater or more difficult than another. When you rest your head and feel that folded paper beneath it, you are not thinking of effort or time. You are sinking into the end where all is already done. You are letting the deeper self take your chosen truth and weave it into the fabric of your days. And because this weaving happens beyond the reach of your conscious mind, you are free to let go of the how and when. You trust the invisible, because you have seen it prove itself faithful. It is written, "The earth bringeth forth fruit of herself, without your anxious interference, without your constant checking." The moment you plant in faith, the process is set in motion. The roots stretch downward into the unseen. The shoot rises toward the light. And just as no one watches a seed at night to ensure its growth, you need not watch your desire in the outer world. You need only rest in the knowing that the harvest is inevitable. This resting becomes its own kind of wealth. You notice that you no longer carry the weight of fear. You no longer look to the calendar or the clock, as if they could tell you when the blessing will appear. You carry instead a quiet expectancy, a sense of being already surrounded by the thing you have chosen. And in that expectancy, life begins to meet you with small proofs. The stray conversation that confirms your vision, the letter that arrives with good news, the sudden ease in a place where there was once resistance. Each of these is like the first green shoot breaking through the soil, and you smile when you see them, not because they persuade you to believe, but because they are the natural signs of what you already believe. You walk past them the way a farmer walks past a sprout, grateful but unsurprised, for you have always known it would come. And yet beneath the gratitude, another awareness begins to stir, an awareness that perhaps you have only been touching the edge of what is possible. If one word beneath the pillow can change the flow of your life in a single area, then what might happen if you dared to choose a word that encompasses the whole of your existence? A word that does not merely call forth one gift, but an entire life lived in the fullness of who you truly are. And as that thought deepens, you begin to feel the weight and beauty of such a word not bound to a single outcome, but wide enough to hold the fullness of your being. It would not be a request, nor even a description, but an identity. One breath of it would carry the vibration of peace, of provision, of love, of perfect health, of effortless unfolding. You sense that if you could sleep in such a word, the whole of your life would begin to rearrange itself, not in fragments, but as one harmonious whole. The mind may try to ask how such a thing could be, but the heart already knows, for the same law that brings one desire into form is the law that sustains the universe. It does not know small or great, it knows only the truth you embody. If you place a single coin in your awareness, it will come. If you place a kingdom there, it will come. The difference is not in the law, but in the breadth of your acceptance. As you lie down at night, imagine that the word beneath your pillow is not merely a seed for one tree, but for an entire garden. Every breath you take as you drift towards sleep waters that garden. Every moment you rest in the feeling of already having, allows new shoots to rise in the unseen. And though you cannot yet walk among them in the outer world, you can feel their presence, the soft scent of blossoms carried on a wind. Only you can sense. It is written, "Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." Not a portion, not a token, but the kingdom, the whole of it. And if that is true, then why should you accept a fragment, when the fullness is already yours? This is the question that begins to hum beneath your thoughts, as you lay your head upon the pillow. The word you choose tonight may be a single sound, a name, a phrase that for you carries the feeling of completion. It matters less what it says to the outer ear, than what it awakens within. For the law responds not to letters or syllables, but to the state they evoke in you. That state is the living blueprint, and the subconscious will build it into the outer world, with a faithfulness beyond measure. And as you rest in that state, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The edges of worry dissolve. You no longer carry your desires as burdens. You carry them as already accomplished facts, and in doing so you are freed to enjoy the path as much as the destination. Life becomes less of a climb, and more of a flowing river, each bend revealing exactly what you have already seen in the stillness of your nights. And somewhere in this unfolding, a new curiosity takes root. If the outer world has always been the echo of your inner word, then perhaps the most powerful choice you could make is to speak a word so vast, so radiant, that it not only transforms your life, but leaves a light upon the path for all who cross it. And you begin to wonder, what would such a word be for you, and how soon will you dare to sleep with it beneath your head? And as you let yourself linger on that wondering, you realize that such a word would not need to be loud to be powerful. It would not need to be ornate or complex. It could be as simple as a breath, as soft as a whisper, yet carry within it the entire weight of creation. For the power would not be in the sound itself, but in the life you clothe it with. The moment you choose it, the moment you accept it as your truth, the whole of your inner world shifts to match it, and the outer world, bound to its shadow, must follow. You can feel it now, even before you name it. A deep stillness gathers in your chest, a quiet knowing that the moment you decide, all else is settled. You place the paper beneath your pillow, not as a trial, but as a seal upon what has already been spoken within. There is no more pleading, no more if, no more when. There is only the steady rhythm of "it is so." The law, faithful and without delay, begins its silent arrangement. You will not hear the movement of its hands, yet you will awaken into days that seem subtly rearranged, as though the pieces have shifted while you slept. Someone you meet will say something that opens a door. A delay will dissolve into unexpected ease. The thing you once felt far away will appear with such naturalness that you will wonder how you ever believed it absent. It is written, "Say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and it shall be done." The mountain is never the obstacle you think it is. It is only the reflection of the state you have been holding. Change the state, and the mountain must move. And when you rest each night in the certainty of your chosen word, you have already spoken to the mountain, not with force, but with the quiet authority of one who knows it cannot remain. This is why the practice works so beautifully in the hours of sleep. The conscious mind, with its noise and questioning, surrenders. The deeper self, which is the seat of all creation, receives your word as the final and only truth. And in the night, without your conscious awareness, it begins to set all things in motion to make that truth visible. Over time, the ritual becomes less about the specific thing you are calling forth, and more about the person you are becoming through it. You start to see that the money, the opportunities, the beauty of the outer results are simply the garments of a deeper transformation. You are learning,
night after night, that the world has no choice but to yield to the self you have dared to claim. And yet as this truth becomes familiar, you feel a new stirring, a sense that there is more still hidden in the depths, waiting to be spoken, waiting to be placed beneath your pillow. And you begin to ask yourself, almost in a whisper, what might happen if you chose a word not only for what you wish to have, but for the one you wish to be in the eyes of eternity. And as that question breathes within you, it carries a different weight, not the weight of longing, but the weight of possibility. You begin to understand that to choose a word for the one you wish to be is to set the entire course of your life upon a new foundation. It is no longer about attracting certain events or possessions, but about reshaping the very center from which all those things flow. If the outer is the shadow of the inner, then to transform the self is to transform the world without touching it. The moment you imagine yourself as this new being, the air changes. You feel taller within, not in stature, but in essence. Your inner posture shifts. The thought of living as you have always lived feels strangely small now, like a garment you have outgrown. And you know that the word you choose to rest beneath your pillow tonight will be more than a desire. It will be a name written in the secret place, a declaration of the truth you have decided to embody. It may be a word that only you would understand, a sound that carries with it the fullness of the state you are stepping into. As you place it under your pillow, you are not asking for this new self to arrive one day in the future. You are claiming that you are already it. The night becomes your sanctuary, your holy rehearsal of this identity, until it feels as natural as breath. The subconscious, in its perfect obedience, accepts this identity without hesitation. It does not argue. It does not delay. It begins to set all things in motion, to make the outer world a match for the inner reality you have assumed. People will respond to you differently, without knowing why. Opportunities will appear that fit you as though they were tailored in advance. The world will reintroduce itself to you, for you are not the same one who walked through it yesterday. It is written, "And I will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth saving he that receiveth it." That name is the essence of your chosen identity, the state that no one else may fully comprehend, but which you carry within as an unshakable truth. This word beneath your pillow is your white stone, and you alone know what it means when you speak it in the silence of night. With each evening, the separation between the one who imagines and the one who lives dissolves further. You rise in the morning already clothed in your new self, without effort, without trying to remember. The state has become you, and the world cannot help but yield to it. And here, in the ease of it, you discover the deepest secret of all, that every word you have ever placed beneath your pillow was never about summoning something from afar, but about awakening to the truth that all of it was already within you. Yet even in that awakening, a softer, more profound wondering begins to take form. If you can choose your being so deliberately, then perhaps the highest choice is not only to shape a life of abundance for yourself, but to let your state be so luminous that it becomes a blessing to every life it touches. And you find yourself asking, in a whisper to the quiet, what word could you rest upon tonight that would not only change your world, but the worlds of all who come near you? And as that whisper settles into the stillness, you begin to sense the enormity of such a choice. For to select a word that blesses beyond yourself is to step into the purest expression of abundance. It is to recognize that the law is not limited to the boundaries of your own life, but moves through you as a river, carrying its waters into every field it touches. In this you cease to be a seeker, and become a source. The wealth you call forth, whether of gold, of peace or of joy, flows outward as naturally as breath, for it is no longer yours to hoard, but yours to give. And yet in giving, nothing is diminished. The fountain does not run dry because it pours. It runs all the fuller for having flowed. This is the paradox the world struggles to see, that the one who lives in the end of already having can give without fear, for they understand that supply is infinite, replenished from within. And so the word you choose tonight may be one that carries not only the feeling of your own fulfillment, but the quiet assurance that all who encounter you will feel its warmth. As you fold that word and place it beneath your pillow, you feel the shift. It is not the grasping pull of desire, but the radiant calm of possession. You are no longer asking for light. You are being the light. You are no longer imagining a single blessing. You are imagining yourself as the atmosphere of blessing itself. And as you rest in that state, the line between your life and the lives you touch disappears. You carry others within the very same prayer, the very same vision, and the law responds to all without partiality. It is written, "Give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure pressed down, and shaken together, and running over." This is not a transaction of the outer world, but the inevitable circulation of the inner one. The state you give from is the state that returns to you multiplied. And when your chosen word is one of generosity of spirit, the world finds countless ways to return it to you, in forms you could never have designed. You may find, in the days that follow, that conversations turn toward kindness, without your prompting. Strangers are moved to help you without reason. Money arrives in ways that feel less like payment, and more like confirmation of the state you carry. The shift may be so natural, that you forget the paper beneath your pillow, yet its vibration remains, pulsing quietly in the depths, arranging the stage in ways unseen. This is the quiet beauty of the practice. It never truly ends. Once you have known the stillness of sleeping in your chosen word, you find that you carry it even in waking, as though the dream has spilled into the daylight. And from here, the question is no longer whether the law will work for you, but how greatly you are willing to let it work through you. And in that question lies another, softer still. If you could rest each night in a word that shapes not only your path, but the very atmosphere of the world you walk through, what would you dare to choose? And could it be that the answer has been waiting patient and silent, within you all along? And as you rest in that silent knowing, you begin to realize that the answer has never been hidden from you. It has been living within your breath, your thoughts, your quietest moments. It is the word that has been whispering itself through your life, even when you were too hurried to listen. It is the tone that appears in your dreams, the feeling that rises unbidden, when you imagine the world as it should be. This word is not so much chosen as remembered, for it has been yours since before the first seed of desire was planted in you. When you place it beneath your pillow tonight, it will not be as a stranger, but as an old friend returning home. You will not ask it to work. You will simply lie beside it, as you would beside a truth too deep to doubt. And as you drift towards sleep, you will feel it settling into every corner of your being, not forcing, not striving, but permeating, until the distinction between you and it is erased. The subconscious will receive it as the new law of your life. From this moment forward, it will filter every thought, every encounter, every circumstance through the lens of that word. Even in moments when you are not thinking of it consciously, it will be shaping the scenes you walk into, quietly rearranging the play, so that every detail affirms its reality. You will notice a different quality to the days, an ease in places where there was once strain, an openness where there was once resistance. It is written, the word is very near you, it is in your mouth and in your heart, so you may do it. This is the nearness of true creation. You are not trying to pull something into your life from the far distance. You are breathing into what is already here, allowing it to take visible form. The word beneath your pillow is the bridge between the invisible and the seen, between the inner kingdom and the outer shadow. And as you continue to sleep in this word, you will find that your sense of self shifts in ways so subtle that they only reveal themselves when you look back. A month from now, 6 months from now, you will remember the one you were before and feel as though you were recalling another lifetime. The old patterns will seem foreign, the old limitations strange, because the self who wore them has dissolved into something truer. The world will respond accordingly. Those who meet you will not always understand why they feel different in your presence, but they will sense the atmosphere you carry. Some will be drawn closer, some will step away, unable to match the new rhythm of your life. All of it will be the perfect outworking of the state you have claimed in the silence of night. And as the days unfold, another thought will rise like a dawn behind your eyes. If the entire landscape of your life can be reshaped by sleeping in a single word, then perhaps the next step is not only to choose words for yourself, but to hold them in the quiet, for those who have not yet learned to choose for themselves. And with that thought comes the first glimmer of an even greater work waiting for you to begin.
And as that glimmer begins to take form, you realize that the law does not restrict itself to the borders of your own life. The state you hold within radiates outward, touching all who come into its reach. Without effort, you are already shaping the conditions of those around you, for consciousness knows no walls. To hold a word for another is not to impose your will upon them, but to see them as they truly are, clothed in the fullness you desire for them. In doing so, you call forth the image of God in them, whether or not they yet see it themselves. You begin to understand that this is the true generosity, not merely to give from the overflow of what you have, but to stand in the state of another's answered prayer until they can stand there with you. And the practice is the same. You choose the word, you fold it gently, and you rest it beneath your pillow. But now, as you sleep, you let it rest not only for your sake, but for theirs. You feel it as though it were already so, not just in your life, but in theirs, their burdens lightened, their doors opened, their hearts at peace. The subconscious, which knows no separation between mine and theirs, accepts this impression as readily as it accepts your own. It begins to arrange the outer world to reflect this shared reality, weaving together scenes and meetings you could never have planned. And sometimes, without knowing why, the one for whom you have held the word will tell you of a shift, a relief, a sudden change in their affairs. They may call it fortune or coincidence, but you will know it as the inevitable reflection of the state you have sustained. It is written, "Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." This burden-bearing is not about taking on the weight of another's struggle, but about lifting them into the vision where the struggle is already resolved. It is the most effortless form of help, for it does not rely on outer action, but on inner knowing. And in this work, you will find that what you hold for others also returns to you, pressed down and running over, for the state you sustain cannot help but touch the one who sustains it. Night after night, this quiet work becomes a joy. You begin to see the world differently, as a field of infinite seeds, waiting for the word that will awaken them. The faces you pass on the street, the voices you hear in passing, all become reminders of the truth, that every life is shaped from within, and you carry the knowledge that you can at any moment choose to see them whole, supplied, and at peace, and that the law will honor that vision without fail. And yet, even as you rest in the beauty of this widening practice, there comes a deeper invitation, one that asks what might happen if the word you placed beneath your pillow was not only for yourself, nor for one other, but for the entire world you move through. What might unfold if you dared to sleep in the feeling of a world already healed, already abundant, already awake to its own divine inheritance? And could it be that such a word, once planted, would ripple outward without end? And as that thought unfolds within you, it carries a stillness unlike any you have known. For to hold a word for the entire world is to step into the consciousness of the infinite, to feel yourself not as a single drop, but as the whole ocean, moving through all. You begin to sense that every face you see, every sound you hear, every breath drawn anywhere belongs to the same life you are now choosing to bless. In this space there is no them and me, no distance between your desire and its fulfillment, because the fulfillment is already complete in the mind of God. You do not choose such a word lightly. You let it rise from the quietest depths, the place where there is no effort, only knowing. It might be a word like peace, or abundance, or awakening, but it will not come to you as an idea to test. It will come as a certainty, the way light pours through a window when the curtains are drawn. And when you fold it and place it beneath your pillow, you will feel as though you have placed the whole world there with it. As you lie in the dark, you rest not in the hope that one day the world will match your vision, but in the feeling that it already has. You see the earth not in turmoil, but in harmony. You see faces radiant with provision and joy. You see rivers running clean, cities humming with kindness, and hearts moving in unison with the truth of who they are. And you do not strain to imagine it. You allow it, as though you have simply remembered what was always so. The subconscious does not resist this scale of vision any more than it resists a single coin or an open door. To it there is no difference between a small picture and a vast one. It accepts what you impress upon it with equal faithfulness and begins to arrange the play accordingly. And though you may not witness all the movements, you will notice moments, a story of generosity where there was conflict, a sudden opening in a place that seemed long closed, a rising sense of possibility in the air itself. It is written, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof." This fullness is not a promise for the future. It is the reality of now, waiting to be seen and lived. By placing your word beneath the pillow, you are aligning yourself with that fullness, letting it fill you until it cannot help but spill over into every sphere you touch. In the days that follow, you may find yourself walking differently, even speaking differently. You listen less for problems, and more for signs of the new song already being sung. You notice beauty in places you once overlooked. You carry a quiet assurance that the shift has already begun, that the outer is simply catching up to the inner in its perfect order. And somewhere in this ease, another question emerges, one that feels less like a challenge and more like an invitation. If the law responds to every state you hold, if the word beneath your pillow can call forth not only the shape of your own life, but the rhythm of the world itself, then what is the highest vision you are willing to rest in tonight? And are you willing to let it be so real within you, that the very air around you begins to change? And as you let that question settle in the silence, you feel the weight of it, not as a burden, but as a crown. To hold the highest vision is not to strain upward, it is to sink more deeply into what has always been true. It is to realize that the greatness you dare to imagine is not something you are creating out of nothing, but something you are uncovering from the depths of what already is. The world you desire is not being built brick by brick, it is being revealed, piece by piece, as you allow it to come into focus within you. You lie down tonight, with the word folded beneath your pillow, but this time it feels different. It is no longer just an emblem of a single desire, or even a collection of desires. It is the living symbol of the entire state you have chosen to dwell in. Every breath you take, as you drift towards sleep, is an agreement with that state. You feel yourself surrounded by it, clothed in it, breathing it in and out, as naturally as the air itself. This is the hidden beauty of the law. It does not distinguish between the personal and the universal. It knows no scale, no boundaries, no limitations. The same creative force that can bring a single opportunity into your life can also reweave the fabric of nations. The difference lies only in the breadth of what you dare to embody. And as you embody more, the law responds without hesitation, without fatigue, without partiality. The outer signs may begin small, a conversation that carries more kindness than you expected, a headline that hints at reconciliation where there was division, a sudden shift in the tone of those around you. Yet each of these is proof that the inner seed is alive, for the harvest of the unseen never arrives all at once, but in waves, each one carrying more of the picture into view. It is written, "The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you." The kingdom does not arrive from outside, it rises from within, silently and irresistibly. And when you lay your head upon that folded word, you are not waiting for the kingdom to come, you are resting in the fact that it already has. As you continue in this way, a quiet power begins to anchor itself in you. You no longer react to appearances with fear or doubt. You see beyond them, knowing that they are only the after-image of a state you once held. You are no longer bound to those old states. You have stepped into a new one, and the world is already bending toward it, whether or not the eyes can yet see. And then from that stillness, another possibility begins to take form, a thought so gentle you almost miss it. What if this practice, this sleeping in the Word, was not something you visited only in the quiet of night, but something you carried as a constant in waking life? What if you could walk through the day, as though the Word was still beneath your pillow, shaping every step, every glance, every breath? And what might happen if the whole of your life became one unbroken dream of its fulfillment? And as that possibility takes root, you begin to see how natural it could be. For the same stillness you touch in the moments before sleep is not confined to the night, it can be carried like a fragrance into the daylight. You realize that the pillow has only ever been a reminder, a sacred token that turns your attention inward to the place where all creation begins. And if that attention can be held in the quiet hours of morning, in the midst of conversation, even while walking down a crowded street, then every moment becomes an altar. You imagine what it would be like to move through the world while holding the same feeling you cradle in sleep, the unshakable sense that the word is already fulfilled. The mind no longer scans for signs, the body no longer leans forward in search. You walk as though the outer world is simply catching up to a truth so established within that it cannot be moved. And as you walk in this way, life begins to mirror it back to you at every turn. The difference is subtle, yet unmistakable. Strangers meet your eyes longer, as if they sense something familiar and safe. Conversations seem to flow toward the very subjects that confirm your vision. Even challenges, when they appear, feel lighter, as though they are already dissolving before they can take hold. You begin to understand that this is the true meaning of living in the end, not a momentary meditation,
but a continual dwelling in the state you have chosen. It is written, "Abide in me, and I in you." To abide is not to visit occasionally, it is to remain, to make your home in a truth so complete that you no longer step outside of it. The word under your pillow taught you to enter that home in the stillness of night. Now you learn to live there without leaving, to let the daylight hours become as much a part of the dream as the midnight ones, and in doing so the speed of reflection seems to quicken. You no longer notice a gap between the inner acceptance and the outer manifestation. Sometimes the correspondence is immediate, arriving before you even finish the inner sentence. At other times it comes so seamlessly that you realize it was already unfolding before you thought to ask. The line between cause and effect blurs, until they seem to arise together, as two expressions of the same being. This is when you begin to taste true freedom, the freedom of knowing that you are not at the mercy of appearances, nor bound to the conditions of the past. You are moving from within, and the world moves with you. And yet in the midst of this freedom, there is an even subtler invitation, one that feels like the soft pull of a tide. What if the same way you carried the word from night into day, you could carry the awareness from waking into sleep, not as a closing of the eyes, but as an unbroken stream of consciousness? What might happen if your entire life became a single seamless state, with no division between the moments of imagining and the moments of living? And could it be that this is the true awakening the practice has been leading you toward all along? And as that thought moves through you, it feels less like an idea, and more like a remembering, as though you have touched this unbroken stream before, perhaps in moments too fleeting to name. You realize that the boundary between waking and sleeping is only as real as you allow it to be. Just as the word beneath your pillow carries its influence into the daylight, so too can the state you hold in waking life be carried back into the depths of night, feeding the cycle until there is no point where the dream begins or ends. You start to see the pattern clearly. The word has never been about a single act, but about weaving a state so completely into your being that it becomes your nature. And when something becomes your nature, you no longer have to remember to practice it. You are it. The inner and outer move as one, the way the moon's pull moves the tide without effort. As you lie down tonight, you feel the difference in your body. There is no reaching, no trying to summon the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It is already there, resting in you like the steady beat of your heart. You place the folded paper beneath your pillow, but this time it feels less like planting, and more like acknowledging what is already in bloom. The word is alive now, not as a separate thought, but as the quiet pulse of your entire being. It is written, "If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you." You hear it differently now, not as a promise of something to come, but as a description of how the law works. When the word abides in you, it is not something you visit and leave, it is the atmosphere you breathe. And in that atmosphere, all things conform without resistance. You notice that the more you live this way, the less you concern yourself with how or when anything will appear. The urgency is gone, replaced by a gentle expectancy, as though you are watching a story unfold that you already know the ending to. This is the deep rest the law invites you into, a rest so complete that you are free to live fully in the present, knowing the future has already been shaped. And in that rest, you begin to wonder about the possibilities you have not yet touched. If this living word can carry you into abundance, peace, love, and joy, what other dimensions of life might it open if you let it? What other experiences are waiting in the unseen, ready to rush into form the moment you allow yourself to feel them as here, as now, as already yours? The thought lingers, not as pressure, but as a quiet promise, that there are rooms in the house of your being you have not yet walked into, and each one is waiting for the light of a single word to make it visible. And perhaps without realizing it, you have been standing at the door of one of those rooms all along, and as you stand before that unseen doorway, you can almost feel the faint warmth of light spilling from the other side. It is not the urgency of something missing, but the quiet pull of something ready to be known. You understand now that every unopened room in the house of your being is already furnished, already alive with the reality you have yet to claim. All it waits for is your decision to enter. And entry, you realize, is never made with footsteps, it is made with a word. The practice that began with a folded paper beneath your pillow has brought you here, to the threshold of more than you first imagined. What was once a gesture toward a single desire has become the key to the entire structure of your life. You see now that the outer shifts you have witnessed, the money that came, the opportunities that appeared, the peace that deepened, were never the true end. They were the gentle evidence of a greater truth, that the inner state holds every possibility, and the moment you inhabit it, the outer world must conform. As you lie down tonight, the paper feels almost unnecessary, not because the ritual has lost its power, but because the word is no longer confined to ink. It lives in you, breathed into every thought, every glance, every moment of the day. You place it beneath your pillow anyway, not as an act of need, but as an act of love, a small bow to the practice that has opened the doors. It is written, "Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and mighty things, which thou knowest not." You feel the truth of that verse in a new way. The great and mighty things are not distant miracles, to be summoned from outside. They are the rooms in your own being, that you have not yet dared to enter, and the calling is nothing more than the quiet acceptance of their reality. In the stillness, you let your imagination move through one of those rooms. You do not decorate it with strain or detail. You let it reveal itself. You feel the atmosphere, the ease, the fullness already present there. It is not something to build, but something to recognize. And as you recognize it, you feel yourself belonging to it as naturally as you belong to your own breath. The subconscious accepts this belonging without hesitation. It begins to arrange the world so that in the days ahead, you will find yourself walking into the outer reflection of this inner room. The people, the places, the events will align, not as a surprise, but as the natural unfolding of a state you have already claimed. And yet, even as you rest in this knowing, another realization stirs, that the house has no end. For every room you enter, there are more beyond it, each one holding a facet of the infinite life within you. And perhaps in time, you will see that the true journey is not to reach the last room, but to become the light that fills them all at once.
And as the thought of becoming that light settles in you, it is no longer just a poetic notion. It feels inevitable, as though the rooms themselves have been whispering this truth since the beginning. You understand now that every desire was never about the thing itself, but about the awakening of more of you. The money, the opportunities, the relationships, the peace, they were all doorways, not destinations. And each time you step through one, you step closer to the realization that there is no final treasure to collect, only an unending expansion of what you already are. The word beneath your pillow, once chosen for a single purpose, now feels like a seed containing an entire orchard. What you thought would bear one kind of fruit reveals itself to be capable of feeding every part of your life. The moment you honored it as truth, it began multiplying itself in ways you could not have planned, ways you did not even know to ask for. This is why the law works without effort. You are not building reality piece by piece like a mason stacking stone. You are uncovering a reality already whole, already finished, waiting for you to dwell in it. When you live in the end, you are not forcing the world to change. You are simply aligning your perception with what already exists. And when you truly see it, the world must reflect it back to you. You close your eyes and feel the weight of this understanding. There is no tension, no grasping, only the deep exhale of recognition. You see how every fear you have ever held was a shadow cast by forgetting this truth. And just as shadows vanish when the light returns, so too do those fears dissolve when you rest in the certainty of the fulfilled state. It is here that the word becomes more than a symbol. It becomes your inner name for yourself. It is not something you speak to an outer God, but something God within you speaks to the world. And the world, hearing its own source, obeys without resistance. You feel now as though you could choose any state and enter it as easily as walking from one room to another. There is no gatekeeper, no delay, no debt to be paid. The only requirement is acceptance, and even that is not earned, but simply allowed. And yet, as this truth deepens, you sense an even quieter invitation, not just to claim what you desire, but to dwell so fully in the light that desire itself becomes an expression of joy, rather than a cry for what is missing. It is a way of living in which every moment, awake or asleep, becomes a pillow for the word. And perhaps this is the mystery you were always meant to discover. And as the thought of living in such light unfolds, you begin to notice how the very air around you seems to respond. The atmosphere itself feels softer, more obedient, as though the world has been listening to you long before you ever believed it could. It is not that creation is happening now, it is that you are finally awake enough to see it. You realize that nothing you have ever longed for has been far away. It has always been folded within you, waiting for the moment you could rest in its reality without doubt. This is why the word under your pillow has worked with such quiet precision. It was never the paper, never the ink. It was the agreement you made in the secret place of your mind, the covenant between your inner hearing and the eternal word. Each night, as you laid your head upon it, you were not asking for money to come. You were lying down in the assurance that it already had. And in that rest, the unseen rearranged itself to make the outer match the inner. You understand now why Scripture says, "The kingdom of God is within you." The treasure you seek is not buried in the distant earth. It is hidden in the soil of your own consciousness. When you plant the seed of a word in that soil, and refuse to disturb it with doubt, it cannot help but bear fruit. Even the appearance of delay is only the season between sowing and harvest, and that season is part of the perfection. Your imagination becomes the field, the sun, the rain. You tend it not with force, but with gentle, unwavering attention. You speak to it silently through the day, not words of hope, but words of certainty. You walk as though the harvest is already in your hands. You breathe as though the fragrance of it fills the air. You rest as though nothing could ever be missing again. And something shifts. You begin to notice that your perception of money itself has changed. It is no longer a thing to chase or secure. It is simply one expression of the abundance that already flows through you. It comes not as a rescue, but as a reflection of the fullness you now carry without effort. Yet even in this peace, you sense there is another layer still, a deeper knowing beyond the harvest itself. For if the seed, the field, and the fruit are all born from the same source, then perhaps the real miracle is not in receiving the thing you once desired, but in awakening to the one who desired it through you. And it is toward that mystery that you now feel yourself being gently drawn. And as you lean into that quiet pull, you begin to sense that the desire for money was never simply about the coins or the notes, nor even the security they seemed to promise. Beneath it, hidden like the root beneath the soil, was the longing to remember your own completeness. The world had taught you to measure worth in figures and forms, yet here, in the stillness of your awareness, you feel the truth rise like dawn, that you were never without. The appearance of lack was only the shadow cast by forgetting who you are. This realization does not come as a sudden shout, but as a soft unveiling, the way morning light slowly dissolves the dark. You see that the word under your pillow has been less a charm and more a mirror. Each night, as you lay upon it, you were laying upon the truth of your own being. It whispered to you in sleep, bypassing the noise of waking thought, planting itself in the fertile silence, until belief became knowing, and knowing became form. You notice now how the outer world bends to match the shape of your inner conviction. The people you meet, the opportunities that appear, the unexpected gifts, they do not arrive by chance, but as obedient reflections of the image you hold of yourself. When you hold yourself as wealthy, life must show you wealth. When you rest in abundance, the outer cannot help but echo that rest. This is the law, eternal and unfailing, as precise as the turning of the seasons, and so the mystery deepens. If the outer is but the shadow of the inner, then there is no true distance between desire and fulfillment. They are two sides of the same breath, inhalation and exhalation of the same divine life. Your role is not to chase, but to consent, to give silent, unwavering agreement to the fact that what you seek is already here, clothed perhaps in unseen form, but no less real, for being invisible. In this way, the word beneath your pillow becomes more than a symbol. It is the anchor of your awareness, the reminder that every night you rest not as one waiting, but as one who has already received. And as you drift into sleep, with that certainty wrapped around you, you enter the state where all creation begins, the still, imaginal womb, where the unseen takes on its garment of visibility. You feel it now, the same life that shaped the stars flowing through you without effort. And as that awareness grows, so too does the question, if all this power has been given to you from the beginning, what else might be waiting, quietly for your consent to be made visible? And as that question lingers in the quiet, you realize that life has always been listening, not to your words alone, but to the deep tone beneath them, the felt conviction in the hidden chamber of the heart. It is here, not in the outer striving, that the true command is given. The world moves, not because you push it, but because you rest so fully in the reality of your desire, that it must obey. You begin to see the delicate dance between stillness and creation. There is no strain in this movement. Just as the tide obeys the pull of the moon, without argument, your world obeys the pull of your inner assumption. The word under your pillow has been the seed, but it is the warmth of your belief that makes it sprout. Without that inner warmth, it would remain only a symbol, but with your consent, it becomes alive, and life itself bends to give it form. There is a passage: before they call I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. These words are not about some distant deity, who may or may not respond. They are the eternal truth, that the moment you dwell in the feeling of already having, the answer is already in motion. The seen and the unseen are simply two phases of the same unfolding. The moment you dare to rest in the end, you have already called it into being. You feel how effortless it is. When you stop asking from the position of lack, the energy shifts. Instead of pleading, you affirm quietly in the deep chambers of your mind, it is done. You no longer measure time by the absence of your desire, but by the inevitability of its appearance. The clock ticks differently when you are living from the end. Days feel full, rather than empty, for you are no longer waiting, you are remembering. The pillow beneath your head becomes a throne, the word beneath it a scepter. In the silence of night, you rule the kingdom of your inner world. You see yourself already in possession of every good thing, already moving in the atmosphere of abundance. You hear the laughter that comes when bills are paid without strain, when the unexpected check arrives, when opportunity greets you like an old friend. You feel the quiet relief of knowing it is yours, and that knowing writes itself into the structure of your life, without effort. The beauty of this truth is that it is not confined to money. The same law that bends the outer to reflect your assumption will do so in every realm: love, health, peace. The principle does not change. Consciousness is the only reality, and as you lie in the stillness of night, that reality shapes itself around the mold you give it. And in that moment, a deeper wonder stirs. If the outer is but a shadow, and you are its light, then what new form might appear, when you dare to imagine beyond even the limits you have quietly set for yourself? It is in that daring, that holy willingness to stretch beyond the quiet borders of your current imagination, that the true treasure lies. For most live within the small circle of what they believe is possible, never realizing that the boundary itself is drawn by their own hand. The world reflects back the size of that circle, faithfully, without judgment. Yet the instant you enlarge it in consciousness, the outer has no choice but to expand in response. And so the word under your pillow begins to take on a new radiance. It is no longer merely the symbol of wealth you once desired. It is the key to every locked door. It reminds you night after night that the unseen responds not to effort, but to assumption, not to pleading, but to possession. When you lay your head upon it, you are not making a request, you are affirming a truth. You are resting in the finished work, as though the very walls around you already carry the fragrance of your answered prayer. The mind, in its old habit, may whisper objections. It may point to the visible bank balance, the unpaid invoice, the absence of opportunity, but you are learning to smile at these whispers, knowing they are only the echoes of an earlier state, a state you no longer inhabit. The present moment is not the shadow of the past, but the seed of the future, and you are free to choose the seed you plant. This is the art of living in the end. You do not wait for the evidence before you feel the truth. You feel the truth until the evidence arrives. You inhabit the mansion in imagination before you hold its keys in your hand. You spend the wealth in thought before the digits change on the account. You taste the fruit in consciousness before the tree even breaks the soil. And when you do, the outer comes to match you with such precision that it feels almost like magic, though it is only law. You notice that the act is strangely restful. There is no straining to force outcomes, no anxious scanning of the horizon for signs. The law works without your constant supervision. Like the seed that germinates beneath the earth, the process is silent, hidden and inevitable. You do not dig it up to check its progress. You let it be, knowing that it cannot fail to bear fruit after its kind. And yet even in this peace, a subtle fire begins to burn, the realization that there is no ceiling to this creation, no final limit to the wealth of the invisible. The more you receive, the more the storehouse seems to overflow. And in that knowing, a question ripples through the stillness. If the law is this faithful with what you have already dared to imagine, what wonders might appear when you imagine without fear at all? And perhaps that is the most exquisite truth of all,
that the law is not here to measure what you deserve by effort, nor to ration its blessings as though they were scarce, but to pour itself out in exact proportion to what you dare to accept. The invisible hand that shapes your life is moved not by merit, but by recognition, not by toil, but by surrender to the end you have already claimed. As you lie with the word beneath your pillow, it is no longer just a practice or a ritual. It becomes the silent covenant between you and the infinite. You are saying, without speaking, I know who I am, I know what is mine, I rest in the truth that my life already contains it. There is no strain, no forcing of outcomes, only the gentle certainty that the outer world must rise to meet the shape of your inner vision. The night grows deep, and the mind begins to drift toward the borderlands of sleep. Here, the conscious guard relaxes, and the seed you have planted can sink into the fertile soil of the subconscious without resistance. You feel it there, not as a hope or a wish, but as an accomplished fact. In this state, the treasure you seek is already in your hands. The abundance you longed for is already yours. You are not becoming wealthy. You are remembering that you have always been the source from which wealth flows. It is here that the mystery resolves itself. The money, the opportunity, the provision, they do not come from some far-off place. They emerge from the self you have dared to embody. They are drawn to you as naturally as rivers run to the sea, for you have become the sea. This is why your assumption is the only work required. Everything else is merely the echo of that inner knowing. And so, when the morning light comes and you rise from your bed, you carry with you the quiet authority of one who has already received. You no longer walk through the day as a seeker, but as a possessor. You speak, act and move as though the wealth has long been a part of your life, and the world, faithful servant that it is, adjusts itself to reflect your posture. In this way, the word under your pillow is no longer just about attracting money. It is about aligning with the truth that every desire is already fulfilled in the unseen. Wealth becomes only one of many signs that you are living from the end, that you have learned to make the invisible your home. And in this home, there are no closed doors, no locked gates, no boundaries, but the ones you choose to keep. You close your eyes once more, not in weariness, but in reverence for this truth. The law will never fail you, because it is not separate from you. It is your own life, your own imagination, made visible. And as you rest, you understand that this practice, this quiet taping of a word beneath your pillow, was never about paper or ink at all. It was about teaching you to dwell so completely in your desired state, that the whole world has no choice but to follow. And so, the final whisper comes, soft as a promise. You are already there.